Yes, 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 love. Love it. Love that. Perfect.
Welcome back to Parenthesis. I'm your host, Penny, and this is my 2 cents on being imperfect. Sometimes the most powerful conversations are the ones that go unspoken. If you're a parent, guardian, educator, or someone who believes kids deserve to grow up knowing they're enough, especially in a world obsessed with perfect, you're in the right place. From body image struggles to perfectionism's subtle grip on young minds, this podcast blends raw stories, expert insights, and practical wisdom. You'll hear from parents, professionals, and mental health advocates working to change the narrative on what it means to be healthy. There's no such thing as perfect. And yet the pressure you feel to get it right, kids feel it too, to succeed faster and more perfectly than ever. Parenting is the toughest job on the market. Imperfection is where connection begins. This podcast covers some content on disordered eating. If you or someone you love is navigating eating disorders, please know you're not alone and there's help out there. In Canada, you can reach out to the National Eating Disorder Information Centre at nedic.ca. That's NEDIC.ca and chat online with a helpline worker or call their toll-free line at 1-866-633-4220.
I came across Lucie Vallée only in the last few months since launching the Reframe Voices Society accounts on socials. Because despite my disdain for most things social media, as a marketer and founder of a grassroots nonprofit, I knew I had no choice but to spend more time online in socials. And as the sociopathic godlike character that the algorithm has become, it's served up Lucie's account to me, which immediately resonated. Her real-world approach to how body image, social pressure, and mental health intersect in young people's lives and older people's lives drew me in, and I knew I had to talk to her. Lucie Vallée is trained in Gestalt therapy, has personally recovered from eating disorders, and according to her Instagram, helps women transform years of body trauma into lasting peace. Her website describes her work as rooted in the here and now, helping clients explore challenges, observe their unique experiences and identity, and untangle whatever feels stuck. Through Lucie's process, clients often gain calm groundedness and the ability to make more empowered decisions in everyday life. Today, we'll talk about how social media, cultural ideals, and childhood experiences shape healthy body image, and how we can reframe the conversation around mental health and eating disorders. Lucie, welcome to Parenthesis.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me, and thanks for answering my DM and just picking it up from there, not knowing me from anyone. Can you just tell anybody who's listening or watching where you are located?
So I am a French-American Gestalt therapist. I practice in Germany and France right now.
Excellent. So, and that was the interesting thing for me, being located in on the Pacific coast in Vancouver. So right now our time zones are, we're recording this, I'm 9 a.m.-ish and Lucie is 6 p.m. And I thought that was interesting because when I first thought I would reach out to you, I wondered how that might work globally in terms of your outreach to potential clients, but it could totally work because here we are, and you know, really thanks to this platform, anything is possible, right?
Yep, I'm happy we did. I'm happy we connected. And it's also interesting to see that a topic that resonates with women in Europe resonates with people in Canada and everywhere worldwide. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty big topic too. And so I'm going to get into some of these questions that I wanted to ask of you, but I'm going to do something a little bit different for myself, which I haven't allowed myself to do yet in the first two parenthesis episodes, which is to just be comfortable in speaking from speaking my mind versus feeling a little bit more rehearsed, because that is the perfectionist model. And parenthesis is all about where we meet imperfection with kindness. So I'll start though with asking you questions and give you a chance to respond. So the first little section is about your work and your story. Can you tell listeners or viewers what someone can expect to gain when they work with you?
Yeah, so I work with people and mostly women, and I help them break away from any negative pattern they might have around their body or food. So I work with women that have body image issues, body dysmorphia, and eating disorders, mostly.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And given your background in coaching and therapy, what misperceptions do you think people have about what therapy or healing around body image really involves?
That's a really interesting question. So I don't know if this is a misperception, but a question that I will get very often when a woman wants to start working with me and we are in our first session together, women will often ask me, is it even possible to heal my body image? Is it even possible for a woman to not worry about her body so much, to feel good and confident? And I think that's a really, first of all, it's a very common question I get. I think I would get that at least 50% of the time. And I
Mhm.
think it's so interesting that I get that question so often. And I think it's really telling, and it says something about our culture and about how we view women. So it means a lot of us have internalized the idea that it is normal for a woman to care about beauty a lot and to have some level of body dissatisfaction. So I think that also shows that the topic of body image is a journey that we all have to go on as women. Like we have to go on this healing journey to reconnect to our body. But it's also a broader question. It's a cultural topic that involves a lot of like systemic forces that we're not always aware of.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just if you don't mind running down that path with me a little further about the systemic side of things, I really do believe that there's such a larger piece of the puzzle at play in that. And so how, Lucie, in the work that I'm doing to try to get ahead of eating disorders in it's the Canadian strategy for eating disorders, which refers to 6 pillars, and the first pillar is um, prevention. And I've met with somebody who deals on the other end of it, on the downstream of eating disorders, and in another nonprofit organization. And just because they deal with counseling in a similar way that you do, she said to me, I don't know if prevention is possible. And to be fair, I could see why that sense would be there, but I do believe that it's feasible if the conversation is more out there as opposed to stigmatized under the realm of mental illness. So I'm just, because it's far much, you and I both know, it's so much bigger than illness and in an individual's head or experience. It's complex. Eating disorders are a complex disorder, which involves, as I talk about in my work, the biopsychosocial aspects of development of a person. And so the bio part, the genetics, is, sure, you could say that's the mental piece. But what about the social part, which comes in from what you were just talking about, right? It's so much bigger. So is prevention possible? Sorry, I just threw this one in here. Do you feel, Lucie, that is prevention possible at some level someday?
Yeah, why would it not be possible? I mean, I'm asking you because I'm not sure why this person said that it's not possible to do prevention.
Thank you. I don't know. I can't speak for her. I do know that she had an experience as a parent with her own child, which is why she works in the field. That said, I can appreciate that the messaging, at least in Canadian methodologies, is that, we want to be sure that we don't, if a parent finds the child, so any, under 18, is in the situation that they've been diagnosed, and you and I both know it takes a long time to even get diagnosed, and in Canada it can take up to over a year to get treated. I think the idea here is that be careful. We want to be careful not to, blame and shame parents. And so, of course, we don't want to do that, because parenting and family dynamics and generational trauma, or just trauma in general in a family, is only one piece of the puzzle. It is a complex illness, like I said, biopsychosocial. So how one person may feel that prevention isn't possible could be based on their individual experience. But I do believe firmly that it is preventable if we are able to get out there and educate more, which is why I wanted to speak with you.
Yeah, I believe that prevention is possible. So I, as a therapist, as a body image therapist, I deal more with people that are beyond that and that are trying to heal themselves. But I definitely think that getting this topic out there, talking about it, knowing the signs in people, and I think it's definitely possible.
Awesome. Thank you. So just getting into the side of your work that that you're doing now, I understand that from our previous conversation that most of your clients are female. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you share what age ranges you tend to see the most?
Yeah, I really get women from every age. I have women that come in as young as 18. I've had, yeah, I don't work with teenagers, so I've had the youngest women I've had were 18, and I've had women, the eldest woman I'm working with right now is in her 60s. So, and it's really diverse. Like there's not one more. I think women at different ages have different struggles with their body image. Because that's tied to also the stages of life you're in. So, when you're a younger woman in her 20s will have issues around identity, wanting to prove, wanting to belong, social acceptance, perfectionism, maybe, like in their 30s also, it's about different, like establishing a family and what that comes in, pregnancy. And then women, as they go into their 40s, 50s, will have more struggles around aging and the perception of other people changing, and like the image they have in other people's eyes also changing, and what that means about their identity. So it's body image is a topic that is with a woman for her whole life, which is also why I believe that doing the work of entangling your worth from beauty is one of the most liberating thing a woman can do for herself, because it's something that then she will be free from that forever. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that what you just said reminds me, and I know this perhaps is in one of the other questions that I move into later, but I'm just going to put it in here now from memory, because I think about something that I read that you shared in the last month or so that was a term I'd never heard before, and correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but I think the idea of performing female. Can you tell me about that expression a little bit more, or tell anybody who's listening or watching, what does that mean?
I think it was more performing femininity,
Yeah.
which is very close, but it's the idea that some women get stuck in the mindset where you have to perform. It's also, other people can call that masking, which is you create a persona that you think is socially acceptable and more desirable than who you feel like you are authentically. And so this form of performing a femininity means that you get a bit trapped in this, like your body is something, a project to be perfected. It is a performance piece that you put up for other people because you want to belong, and that disconnects you from who you are authentically. It disconnects you from other people, from being present in the moment. It's very tied to also self-surveillance, which self-surveillance means that you are basically having a bit of an out of body experience where you are observing yourself live rather
Mm-hmm.
than living from inside your body.
Mm-hmm.
So performing femininity or self-surveilling basically is cutting yourself from your body. You stop inhabiting your body, being connected to your physical sensations, to your need, to your desires, and you start performing to be
Mm-hmm.
accepted and to
Mm-hmm.
belong.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And I have definitely thought about those concepts many times in my life, more sometimes often than others, more times off, sometimes more often than others. And it's such an interesting terminology for it, which I felt really just simplified it and nailed it on the head. So performing femininity, it definitely makes sense as I sit here thinking about how I get such myself little bits of anxiety before I like put on myself on the screen, and I make sure my hair is just right. And just because there's that piece that says, as you say, the image that we put out there, and we're trying so hard to just belong and be accepted. And so over the course of a lifetime, how really detrimental it is to talk about this in the moment, you and I, such that they're raising their children. And again, this is my motivation, of course, for talking to you, because hopefully more people than just parents will listen to this or watch it. But ultimately, my mission as a mother of an 18-year-old is that other parents, mothers, fathers, guardians, grandparents even, will think about the objectification of females that is still done today. And we just need to be really conscientious of how we really address that as time goes on, so that we're not putting that pressure on females, especially because unfortunately there are a lot of things we could go down that path about as it relates to specifically females. Although I will say, and I mentioned this to you in our first call, that of course males and other genders experience disordered eating, which can lead to eating disorders. But the data that I have says that over approximately 80% of those who've been treated, at least in Canada, have been female. Does that sound about right for where you stand as well?
I mean, I have a lot more women that come to me, and I think that's also due to my social media and my content, which is also very aimed at the female experience, I would say. Um, I do think what you said is very true. There is something about the experience of living in a woman's body in our culture that holds a very specific significance. Like it is very significant. Like living in a woman's body, there is unsafety, like the how we feel with when men are around, the way men look at our bodies, like the way we carry babies. We have a specific experience that are intrinsic to being a woman that shape the relationship that we have to our body. I think we all go through as women through similar experiences in our life. Like the first time we are sexualized as young girls, the first time we get a period, the first time like our body behaves in a certain way, all of that. And that shapes our body image also. And so also the way our culture sexualizes women, the way we objectify women, the way we treat women, so you've mentioned also some of my posts I made about how media treats women and women's bodies, the way they're depicted in mainstream movies and TV shows. So all of that creates a specific relationship to our body. That all of that disconnects us from our body and leads us to perform a version of femininity that we think is accessible, desirable, and yeah, desirable. I was going to say another word, but I lost it. So all of that is to say that definitely there is the specific experience of being a woman living in a woman's body creates a specific flavor of body image issues, but men also have their own issues. And I think you've made another episode that was really interesting about that. And I think we shouldn't exclude men from this conversation because it's also, I think it's rapidly changing. Really, the way the body of men are shown in the media, the way the culture pressures men to look a certain way is becoming more and more toxic in a way, and it is creating more and more eating disorders in the men. And also, what is interesting there is that men are a lot less likely to ask for help than women are.
Yep.
And so it's also devastating, and it leads to more severe consequences for men in terms of like with the I've seen that, like a self-harm or suicide rate are higher for men because it's harder for them to ask for help. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
I
all that
read
is to say that men should not be excluded from this conversation, as you know, and as you've already said.
Yeah, thanks, Lucie. It's
Mm,
very true. And
mm,
I think about if I were to have a son, how equally heartbroken I would be as a mom to, witness my son go through what I had gone through, just as I felt when I was raising my daughter, that I certainly never ever wanted her to go through what I went through. So that's a extremely valid recognition, and I read that information as well in men's mental health. So yeah, it's a very important topic to discuss on any gender whatsoever, because it's a very big topic, and I think it's just being swept under the rug. So that's great. I'm going to move on to the next one, which is am I saying Gestalt correctly?
Gestalt.
Gestalt, thank you.
Mhm.
As a Gestalt therapist, I understand you focus on the here and now, but what kinds of childhood or early experiences tend to surface for clients, and how do those influence their day-to-day behaviors around body or food that you've noticed?
Yeah, there are some experiences that tend to come back over and over again when people describe their lives and their childhood. I think the three big experiences would be like the three big childhood experiences, yes, would be the relationship to the mother, relationship to the dad, and what happens in school and early friendships. So I think when a young girl, what happens a lot is that they will observe their mother and the inner dialogue of their mother being very critical. They will observe a mom that, talks about herself in a very self-deprecating way, or that will comment on her own body. And so young girls will just mimic that. They will just think, well, that's what it means to be a woman. That's how it should be. So that's the first one. Then in the relationship with the father, I would say it's a lot more about observing how the father talks about women in general. So um, I think it also, like, for women that are maybe 30 and above, our fathers, like, it was a different time, and men would talk about women's bodies a lot more openly. And so a lot of women have been exposed to to fathers that would just criticize women's, and like, just being in the street and just commenting like, oh, well, she looks fat, or commenting
Mm,
about celebrities, or um like the friends of the people that come to in my sessions, like comparing them to their friends, or just openly
mhm,
talking about their bodies. So that's, I think, something also for fathers that could be listening this, like, if you don't talk about women's bodies around your daughter, that would be like a major thing for her. Like, and yeah, and the last big like experience that I hear of is women that talk about school and early friendships. So what
mhm,
happens in schools also is really really, it can be really harsh. Like we've all been through school, so we know how that can be. But yeah, kids, so there's sometimes bullying or close to bullying experiences, or like being excluded or feeling rejected based on how we look as a child. That can have a really, really big impact on how what we believe about ourselves growing up.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that would be it, those three types of experiences, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are huge. And let's go back to, if you don't mind, the model of the biopsychosocial. Those each pull something out of those three different buckets of what the whole person health, complexity is truly. So you've identified those in all three of your points. So thank you for laying it out so clearly. It's interesting. So, I have these thoughts, but then I don't write them down because I'm just listening so intently what you have to say, and it might come back for me later. But lead into the next question, and I might be able to retain this thought, and as I move into this one especially. Your work is trauma informed and sensitive to neurodiversity. How do you see neurodivergent traits interacting with eating disorders or body image struggles?
Well, I think this is really interesting. Like, they have been studies that show that women with autism or ADHD have 3 to 10 times more chances to develop an eating disorder in their lives, which I think is like huge. Like, I'm always looking out for research in that area because I had an eating disorder and I have ADHD, so I want to know more. But from what I'm noticing with the people I work with, I think the traits of these neurodiversity that interact with eating disorders would be a big one would be masking. So women that have ADHD or autism tend to mask more because they're also masking is what I said about performing. They are performing a persona that feels more acceptable than their authentic ADHD, completely impulsive and inattentive person. So they're used to masking a lot. So then have like controlling food becomes part of the masking, and then the control over food can just go out of hand basically. I think then there's also the impulsivity of ADHD. Like you are like ADHD tend to be impulsive people that are also sometimes a lot of the time emotionally dysregulated. So food can help to regulate our emotions. So that interacts also with that. And then a last one would be sensory. So people with ADHD or autism have different um, the way sensory experience of life overall. Their brain is wired a bit differently, and they, like the sounds are louder
Mm.
and the textures are different. And so there's something about food there also that is just experienced in a different way. And I'm not completely sure how yet, but I'm really like interested every time I hear clients describing that. Yeah.
Okay, so I am so sorry, delighted to hear the data that you shared about you said 3 to 10 times more likely for a neurodiverse female to develop an eating disorder. And the only reason why I can say that is because I don't even know if I shared this with you or if it was evident in anything I said, but late diagnosed ADHD last year at 50. And everything you said makes complete and total sense. But what really opened me up to, and I really like, I'm a crier, so I was about to cry a minute ago. But I just decided to hold it together because, I'm learning more about emotional regulation. And it's so fascinating though, because this term came up for me in the last, let's say, less than a year. Actually, that's half a year since I started multimodal therapy for ADHD and in ADHD counseling. And let me just say that there is a difference between a counselor and an ADHD counselor who has had their own experience with ADHD, because my experience receiving counseling is that therapist really understands the way an ADHD brain works better than a neurotypical counselor may be able to work with you. So my counselor at the time, she gave me, and she still is, she gave me the term scaffolding, which as I started to read more and more about ADHD, and I divulged everything as we hyper focus. There's the inattentive piece, but then there's the hyper focus piece, right? So as I went down the rabbit hole of psychoeducation and learning more about this thing that I didn't even realize my entire life that I had. And there's a book, there's an author, Jessica McCabe. She's American. It's called How to ADHD. It's actually right here behind me. I read that over Christmas and I just divulged the whole thing. And then I watched a whole bunch of her YouTube videos and I was just like mind blown, because the whole idea of masking and back to this term scaffolding, which my counselor gave to me, I knew, Lucie, in my head as I was maybe not a teenager, probably not even in university, but by the time I became a young, professional, I remember specifically having, couples over for dinner, as couples often do, and standing across from friends who I quite liked. But at some point in the conversation, I remember specifically drifting off and thinking, why can't I retain this conversation? And being very frustrated. And in my experience, because I would find it happening, off and on, and enough that I felt like there was like, a little hamster on a wheel in my head doing something completely different. And the sad part is that I often told myself, despite how intellectual, I felt in one-on-one conversations with my husband, I often felt stupid. And so I would tell myself that narrative, you're stupid. Why can't you retain the information? And I developed scaffolding, which was, you listen to the last thing they said. And I was always very eye contact focused because I love relationships. I love humans. I love kindness. But so I could retain the focus in an outward way that appeared like I was in the conversation. And I had this little trick. And the trick was, what was the last thing they said? Oh, focus on that word and reflect it back to them. Oh, so that happened. Really? Tell me more. I really had no idea what they just said, Lucie. But I would do that throughout my, personal relationships off and on. If, however, we would get into a conversation where I felt like it was in a deep emotional moment that they were sharing with me, a personal moment that had nothing to do with a topic that disinterested me, because I'm so really a care about people. I would remember every single detail. I can remember, I would remember birthdays, first names, family names, all the things to me that help build relationships, which is probably why after a while I went into account development in agency work, because that piece about caring about the client and getting to know your client was a big piece of relationship development that worked for me. But my point is, as I go off on a tangent, as someone with ADHD can do, the scaffolding, that scaffolding is such it blew my mind when she told me that, because, think of a building, I've built up all these little things, scaffolding and types of structures around this person so that I could feel like I belonged and feel like I fit in. And the childhood eating disorder really didn't fully come back in full form until after, at some point in my later adult years. But as much as eating disorders can be recovered from, they can also be chronic unless you know the source, the true source. And that's why I appreciate the work that you're doing, because you're helping individuals and understand their whole person dynamic and the complexity of what really led them to use an eating disorder as a coping mechanism for controlling what they couldn't understand. And that's certainly my story. And the neurodivergent piece, it makes complete and total sense what this is becoming you interviewing me now, even though you didn't ask me the question. I'm just sharing, but I just wanted to say that this is the piece for me that is the most fascinating, because yes, I completely resonate with, or that concept completely resonates for me, which is that, I couldn't really be my true self. I had to perform femininity. I had to survive and to get by. And, it's so sad for that younger version of me, not really because I'm who I am today, but I feel sad for any young woman or older woman still stuck in the same place that I was stuck in until that light bulb went off. So I just wanted to throw that
Mm.
out there.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I also
Thank you.
resonated a lot with your story. Thank you.
Aw, thanks, Lucy. That's very sweet. Well, you're welcome to share anything more if you would like to before I move on to shame, denial, and belonging, which is the next section, but it's up to you.
I think your story is just amazing. I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay, super. Thank you. So you and I spoke about the concept of belonging, and in the workshops for Reframe Voices, it's called Beyond Body Talk, and I talk about belonging as a basic human need that you've also identified earlier. It starts in parenting, but extends outward from there. I know you've tied this back to very early human survival instincts in your own materials. In one specific piece that I downloaded that I watched, I mentioned, and I loved what you said about the caveman brain and survival. Can you walk us through that idea and how it connects to disordered eating thinking?
Yeah, so it's exactly as you said, this idea that
Correct.
belonging is one of our core needs, like, because we are social creatures. Like, we've heard that a lot, but what it means is, like, if we go back to our brain has basically been the same for 250,000 years. So we have the same brain as cavemen. And so our basic need there was to be accepted by our tribe, to have a tribe around us. That's how we would survive. And so belonging, being accepted, being surrounded by a group that likes us was really important to us. And I think that still lives in us today, that we have this deep, deep, deep need to be accepted and loved and to belong and to feel important and connected, all of that. And so what I think is how this connects to disordered eating thinking is that I think as little girls, we were born perfectly embodied and connected to our bodily sensations, to our innate wisdom. We are playful, innocent, and we have this connection to our body. And then something happens between the age of, I would say, 5 and 10. We go through experiences that change that relationship. We start realizing how people are looking at our bodies, how they're commenting on it, how they're comparing them. We start to understand that if we want to belong, then we need to achieve a certain body type, a certain appearance. And not reaching that also becomes a threat to our safety. If I am not pretty, if I'm not desirable, then I am at risk of being criticized by my dad, of being criticized I've being excluded from social groups at school. So it becomes a really, really important thing. It creates big emotions of fear, of shame, of anxiety, and all of that gets really trapped in the body. And so, yeah, that's how the caveman brain, I think our physiology, how we are wired for searching belonging, gets connected to this searching for a specific body type, and how that gets really encrypted really deeply in our emotions and in our body.
Yeah, thank you. And I think what I liked about, also on top of all that really good stuff, I think what I liked about the presentation that I watched that you gave was that this idea of so 250,000 years ago or what have you, that if you're in belonging in the cave, that's where the food comes. That's where, that's where the warmth comes. That's, where the fire is burning, and and all the good things that come with being with groups. And if you can't have the basics on Maslow's hierarchy of needs physiologically, which is, being fed and, have your thirst quenched and have shelter, like the basic physiological needs, and you're booted out of the cave, like forget it, like game over. So the idea of this kind of, processing in a young child's brain as they start to develop and see, the real playground of social around them, as well as how, their mother or father is interacting with them, then that is the thinking of a child. It's like, well, I better fit in or else I'm out, even though ideally that's not the case in a household. But you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's really well said.
Well, you too. Thank you. Okay, so you do some great posts about influencers and celebrities and female public figures, and so I think your posts are fantastic. They're very much a commentary on the public commentary on those female public figures. And the example that I would like to call out is she's a Canadian icon, Nelly Furtado, incredible voice, a lot of, I thought I'm like a bird, I only want to fly away was a song that was from my, younger years, but it's like I even heard my daughter sing it a couple of years ago, who's, wasn't when she was in high school. So I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. It's still a very popular song. But what impact do you think the online obsession with body changes up and down the scale of femininity for those female public figures, like what is the deal with the online obsession with women's bodies and this whole idea of the expectations of what young people are potentially witnessing when they see that garbage in the commentary?
Yeah. I think what's interesting to point out also is that what we're seeing today with Nelly Furtado, how she's getting shamed on social media, is just a new version of what we saw in the 2000s when I was a little girl, with magazines talking about Britney Spears, like, what did she do with her body? She's really let herself go. It's the same mechanism of the masses criticizing a woman's body, basically. And I think that does have a big impact on young women today, the same way it had a big impact on me and the women my age when I was younger. So I think seeing how heavily they get criticized for just existing in a body that is not perfectly fitting the beauty standard, I think that has consequences on young women. I think it teaches them that their looks will always be judged no matter how successful they are. Like Nelly Furtado is wildly successful, but she's not the only one who got body shamed. I think Sydney Sweeney last year also got a wave of body shaming, or I don't know, the list would go on and on, of just women who get body shamed. And I think those are all successful women. So this is teaching young girls that no matter what you've accomplished, no matter what you achieved, people will still focus a lot on how you look like. So, it teaches them that their value as a human being lies a lot, for a big part, in their appearance and their ability to achieve a certain look, which is really sad when you think about them, because it also teaches them that they need to worry about how they look like, that they need to spend a lot of energy thinking about that. It teaches them that they need to perform femininity, that they need to self-surveil. And it's just really sad. And then they grow up, basically, it teaches young women to grow up worried about their look instead of just feeling comfortable and confident in their own skin the way that they should.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well said. And it's I think about, there was a young girl in Instagram who I was served up her content the other day, and I loved her post. She was saying things like, was Marie Curie thinking about how she looked when she discovered radiation? Was Rosa Parks thinking about how she looked when she took the seat on the bus? This is, I mean, technically, actually, Rosa Parks was, because in that case, it was a Black girl's story about racism. So in any case, in terms of body type, specifically, no. I mean, I thought that her post was very inclusive and thoughtful, and and well thought out regarding a woman's brain versus her body. And so, or a young girl's brain versus her body. And so that is your point. And I feel like that is such a waste of energy that frustrates me. And when I think back on, the amount of energy wasted in, myself included, of, do I appear? Is this the right appearance? Am I back when I was a little girl? It was always, hold your hands tight and sit still. And not that I was the type of ADHD child that bounced around. The bouncing around was always in my mind, but just having those thoughts going through your head and just thinking, well, if I just sit still and hold my hands clasped in front of me from like the 1980s, then that would make me a good girl. And I think boys felt the same pressure in that era. And in terms of, moving that along in time, you've mentioned the early 2000s and pre-social media. And certainly that was the case because eating disorders have been around pre-social media. And in my situation, it was definitely, or throughout my teens, it was definitely the magazine covers. And in that time, it was about Kate Moss, Cindy Crawford, and all the other, the types of models of the era on magazine covers. And so, identifying as I did, not really understanding so many things about representation in advertising as I do today. But I really think it's so important that whatever medium or media we're consuming or distributing, that it's the responsibility of marketers and advertisers to ensure representation of all body types, because and intersectionality and able-bodied versus disabled, like in the character in the film. What was the film? I just saw it last summer, the one with Ariana Grande. Help me out, Lucy.
Wicked.
Wicked, thank you. Such an excellent film about all the things. And so anyway, I just feel like this is a responsibility of those in a position of power to think really hard about the messaging that's being put out there and to increase the diversity on body images as well. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with that. I know there's a lot of trolls online, and it'll be a lot of work to try to get them to stop trolling as they do on celebrities and others. But that is another. We're not going to fix that today. Last few questions before we wrap up. You did start to talk about pushing back on AI standards as well, just simply because, of course, AI is rewriting the rules for how polished and perfected women are expected to look. And I love your terminology, like I said, performing femininity. And so I thought, how can we start to shape a new era beyond the culture of performance, where the next generation grows up valuing authenticity and kindness and self-worth versus appearance as a measure of belonging?
So before I answer that, I just want to comment on what you said before. I think that you're very right. Like, that's seeing more and more diverse bodies is just so important. Also, it's such an important piece of healing our relationship to our bodies as women, because seeing women that have different types of bodies and that are authentic, that are happy, that are successful, that's really really important. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I think it's really valuable. And so in regard to what you just said right now, your question about how can we create new spaces, or how can we, what can we do to spare the next generation or teach them to value authenticity? I think the most radical thing we can do is to stop participating in the performance game ourselves. I think refusing to engage in the body talk and the comparison conversation, and just showing for our daughters a version of femininity that is not focused on um, looking a certain way or having a certain body type, but just being free, feeling powerful, feeling creative, all of that. I think that is just the most valuable thing we can do. And then after that, I think it's also creating spaces for children where their worth is not tied to their appearance, celebrating their ideas, their creativity, their character, while refusing to comment on their body or engage in any diet culture conversation. And I think when we do that, we're actively challenging a system that profits from our insecurities and from our daughters and sons' insecurities. So, doing that work also of healing ourselves and trying to transmit that to the people around us is just so big, because if you add up all these people doing that, then you're just challenging a system that has been feeding on our insecurities for hundreds of years. So, I think it's a really amazing work to do that.
I love that you said that. I love that you said that. And as you said that, I relaxed my shoulders. I stopped sitting up so straight, and I just thought, like, what am I, gosh, like, I perform femininity sometimes, and I wish I didn't. But like Lucie, I'm 51, so I am trying to sort of fit within that window of what we're experiencing today with Gen X is, what does it mean to age and and whatnot. And by the way, this is my natural hair color, so I'm quite lucky. My father had very similar hair, and recently my husband was standing beside me, and he saw a very long gray, and he's got wicked silver hair. I call him Silver Fox, but he pulled out one gray, and I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't want to I have like this." Fine. I have a lot of hair, but it's fine. And I said, "What are you doing? I don't want to lose hair now." So like, it's okay. We accept, I'm accepting the idea that I'm going to go gray, but gosh, it's a whole other ballgame, Lucie, when you talk about women aging. I know you're addressing that in your content online as well. So thank you for continuing that conversation as well, because I don't want to perform femininity anymore. I need to be done with that. I'm in perimenopause, and as my daughter would say, as a grown ass woman, like I just need to own that and just be myself. So that's what I'm working on next. So
I think also the definition of femininity that we were fed or that we were taught collectively is very restrictive. It's just very narrow, and it's I do this exercise with the women I work with. So what do you think, what do you associate with femininity? And a lot of the time they will answer being thin, being like having a small character, not too loud, Barbie, long hair, smooth skin, all of that. And like, this is your definition of femininity? This is so restrictive. And this is what we were taught. And so once you start challenging that and you decide, no, femininity for me, being a feminine woman is going to mean being wise, being nurturing, being free, being powerful. That's just so much more exciting. It's exactly what you said. The first definition makes our shoulders become smaller. We feel constricted when we create this new idea of what a woman is. That's just wow. Like, okay, yeah, let's go for it. So yeah.
I love that.
Also,
I love that.
I just want to mention also, I have to go at in
That's
4 minutes basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, because I heard your little alarm go off, and you know what? I had a few other questions, but I'm going to let you go because I feel like you have a client and you have to get to. So let's wrap it up.
Okay.
I don't have any other questions for you today, so that we can make sure you can get off on time. But I just want to say that whoever is your client on the next call, they're very lucky to have you. And I feel very lucky to have had the time with you today. So thank you so much for joining Parenthesis.
Yeah, thank you so much, Penny. This was a really interesting conversation, and thank you for sharing all of this about you. Also, I learned a lot and was really interested in learning more about your story.
Well, thank you so much. I'll tell you, there's a link to Unsinkable. I just did an interview with them the other day. I'll share it with you after. And it's me truly sharing my story. So I welcome you or anybody else to check it out. So thank you for bringing that up. Thank you so much, Lucie. I loved meeting you.
Thank you. I also loved it. Thank you so
I'll
much.
talk to you soon.
Okay.
Oh, before you go, super quick, is there any website link other than lucievallée.com? That's LucieVallee.com that you want somebody to know about you?
I think the best is my Instagram. It's better than my
Instagram?
website.
Okay,
Yeah.
super.
Like
Go to his Instagram.
my website is I'm not using it
It's okay.
anymore. Like because as when I used to be a therapist in Berlin, which I'm not accepting new clients anymore from that. So
Okay.
anyways,
All right.
so
All the
don't
links will be on YouTube. All good. Okay. Instagram #1. Okay. Thanks, Lucie. Take
yes.
care.
Thank you, Penny. Have a
Bye-bye.
wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye.